out of the hotel, I've had breakfast and I'm heading for a walking tour of Lisbon city centre. Right, so I've made my way to the starting point and I think we're about ready to go. The walking tour has started. We just had 10 minutes of Portuguese history, which is quite fascinating. Portugal is, as it turns out, one of the oldest cities in Europe. Can be traced back to about 3,000 years ago when the Venetians ruled here, and then later the Romans. So from the 8th century, the Moors invaded and occupied for a few hundred years. The Moors were Muslims from North Africa, mainly the Morocco-Libya area, and they've left an influence of Islamic culture that's still impressioned on the city today. The Moors were defeated by the King of Portugal and the Pope in an effort to bring back Christianity into the country of Portugal. This is the Lisbon Theatre House, modelled off of La Scala in Milan. The next major part of Portuguese history was the 1755 earthquake that struck here in Lisbon. Epicentre was about 130 miles out at sea. But it pretty much destroyed 90% of the buildings and the infrastructure here in Lisbon. See over there a bluish building. That's one of the influences of the Islamic times here. Islamic tiles decorate the building. Now heading up the hill. Been talking about the great earthquake of 1755 that destroyed 90% of the city. Apparently it struck on All Saints' Day, November the 1st, 1755, and there was outrage at the time because of the 200 churches that were in Lisbon, only 3 survived with the roof intact. So on 197 of them, the roof collapsed and killed everybody inside that was praying on All Saints' Day. The only area that survived was the old town of Alfama, which, as it turns out at the time, was a red light district. It survived because of granite foundations, so everybody in the red light district survived, everybody in churches died, and that started people looking towards the Age of Enlightenment. So science over religion, which at the time was very controversial. So this building here has a very Islamic influence. You can see from the repeating tile patterns. One of the ways to tell whether the tiles were created with an Islamic influence is what the tiles actually depict. So if it's the depiction of something that's living, it's not Islamic. Because apparently the only person that could do that was God. So Islamic tiles are usually flowers or something like that.
The third revolution was the scientific revolution. Has anyone here heard of Immanuel Kant? Yeah, maybe half of the group, good, more than half of the group. He published a paper describing the earthquake as being caused by bubbles of gas under the solid Earth's crust. That sounds a bit basic to us nowadays, maybe too simple, but back then it was revolutionary. Merely daring to describe a natural phenomenon with scientific reasoning rather than attributing it to divine will was unheard of, especially in Portugal. And in that way, many philosophers argue that although the great earthquake was a curse for this city, it may have been a blessing for the rest of Europe, but it enabled us to advance hundreds of years faster on the scientific field than we would have without the disaster.
So Lisbon is made up of lots of different micro towns. We've just been to Bairro Alto, which is the high town. We're now heading into Chiado, which is the area that I'm actually staying in. That's where my hotel is. This is the statue of the king who in the 1300s led Portugal to victory against the Spanish invasion. So one thing I haven't really talked about much was the age of discoveries, as Portugal calls it. Roughly 500 years ago, the Portuguese sailed to the Americas, particularly South America, Brazil as it is known now, and colonised large parts of that continent. We're in the Chiado area, or downtown as it's known in English. This entire area was destroyed during the 1755 earthquake. All of the buildings that are now standing here were given technology at the time that made them what they thought was earthquake proof. It turned out that it was actually quite a good system for its time, but it doesn't compare to modern standards. Just walking through the arch into Commerce Square. So the tour's just finished. I've got to say it was extremely good. The lady that took it really did know her stuff. It's finished in Commerce Square, or Comércio Square. And this is the scene of the former palace. There was a palace here right in this square before the earthquake of 1755, and it was destroyed during that earthquake. There's the castle up above as well, which is where I was yesterday. That is the 25th of April bridge. Named that after the date of the revolution here in 1974, where the Portuguese dictator was disposed of and the country moved to a democracy. That ended one of the longest reigns of modern day dictatorship in Europe. Over there as well you can see the Christ is King statue, which is modelled after the Christ of the Redeemer statue in Brazil. Right, it's time to get some lunch and then head over to the metro, where I'm going to catch an underground train to a water museum and ancient aqueduct.